Well, I've got a thruple for you today because we were talking about not just one, not just two, but three ultimate Hellcat builds, because all of these are set up different ways and each of them have very positive attributes depending on which way you want to go. There are going to be advantages and disadvantages to these, just like anything else. Say you want to go with something like a compensated version like that, or go with a fully ported and slide worked version like that one right there, because they're going to do similar things in very different ways at very different price points. And when the time is right, we are also going to lightly touch on the new Vortex Defender, which has all of the modern options in it that they changed from the initial launch, which I think all of you are definitely going to agree was probably the way they should have been right off the bat. And we're going to take this in stages from the least expensive, least permanent, to the most expensive, most permanent, right? That's kind of how it's going to go today. But what is a Hellcat Pro? Because you need to know that before we get started, because there's a Hellcat and there's a Hellcat Pro. The Hellcat Pro is the slightly larger version, coming with a 15 or 17 round capacity. It's got a little bit longer of a grip, so it gives an almost full-size pistol feel while still being ultra concealable and ultra carryable. There was a couple different versions in different colors. There's a threaded version, a non-threaded version, but ultimately 9mm striker fired optics ready pistol with solid options like a decent trigger, really good grip texture, front serrations, rear serrations, good solid knife sights right out of the box. So overall, a very solid foundation. Let's kick this off with the flat dark earth version of the Hellcat Pro. This was the threaded version, or the peanut butter banger if you want to call it that. And we're going to talk about everything here because it's about the entire package when it comes to the ultimate Hellcat Pro. So you will see up top we have a Holosun 507K in green. Green is scientifically proven to be better on your eye. You can see more shades of green than any other color, so it does have advantages. The Holosun 507K has turned out to be a great red dot. They're very durable, they're very reliable, and I think the 507K version is like $325, but the more budget-friendly 407K is only like $225. So that is a very solid price for an optic that has proved to be as good as this one has. Now, on the front, the business end, you will see the illumination device, also known as the Streamlight TLR7A. Now, Streamlight is an absolutely great price point for performance. I have personally used Streamlight lights for probably the past 17 years, both professionally and personally. I trust these lights any day, every day. I carry them literally almost every day. But this one is awesome because it's short, compact, dual activation buttons, left-handed, right-handed, decent brightness, 500 lumens, good candela. Overall, for something in a concealed market, it's a great size and a great overall fit, especially for the price point being right around 130 bucks. And of course, out on the business end there, you can see the Herrington Arms comp right there. These have a great reputation in the market. I have used several Herrington Arms comps over the past several years. They have provided reduced muzzle rise, reduced felt recoil, and they've not caused any functional issues. So when you get into a compensator or some other stuff we're going to talk about today, you can induce some cycling issues if they're not designed right. Luckily, Herrington has done a pretty solid job on just about every one that I've tested. A noticeable felt recoil, and they haven't caused malfunction. So how much recoil reduction? Well, I'm not a scientist and I don't have scientific equipment to measure it. What I will say is when you punch this thing out and start pulling the trigger, it is noticeable. How much? I don't want to put a percentage on it, but it is noticeable. The cool thing about the compensator setup here is if you buy the threaded barrel version from the factory, which this was, for about 69 bucks, you can get this comp, thread that thing on there. It's not permanent. Go out there, have some fun, see that reduced recoil, and overall have a very, not only performance-based setup, but a very cool looking setup as well. The downside here is you are adding length to this thing. So your ultra short compact carryable pistol just got about 1.25 inches longer. So you can see it does protrude past the TLR7A light right there. But again, some people like that look, some people don't like that look, ultimately up to you. But again, not a permanent setup here. You can remove it, go back to normal if you wish. Now, if you want to go with something like this, you can also just buy the threaded barrel, either from Springfield Direct, or there are aftermarket versions as well. And I will have a build list down there with all of the parts we're going to talk about here today, so you can do all of your own research when it comes to everything you're going to see here in the video. I know some people out there may be asking, what exactly does a compensator do? So you can see the ports on there, both on the side and the top. What that's going to do is it's going to disperse the gases up and out to the side at a specific angle. That way, as you're pulling the trigger, those gases are going to disperse, helping you control the recoil and giving you less felt recoil in the hand, or less like push in the hand. So some are better than others. Some people say that porting is better than doing a compensator, and that argument will never go away, and it's going to happen in the comments down below, I promise you. But this is a good way to get performance on a budget-friendly setup. And now that you know how a compensator works, let's talk about something else, and that is gonna be hydration, because this video is brought to you by the Battle Bottle over at ironinfidel.com. Basically, dehydration sucks. Don't let it happen to you. It's the summertime now, so if you need a water bottle, a hydro flask that has everything you can want, from a cell phone pocket to a key lanyard to a grab handle to a sippy style top to a regular screw top, you can have that in a battle bottle. So check them out, link down below in the description. What is our overall option package price here? So if you were following along as I was talking about the prices, with the light, with the comp, if you bought the threaded barrel version, if you go with the 407K, you're gonna be right at 430 bucks. That's light, comp, and optic as a package, not bad. If you wanna go with the 507 version, it's about 75 bucks more. And if you don't have a threaded barrel, but you wanna go with a comp, you'd have to buy the threaded barrel. I think is right at about 170 bucks. So depending on where you're at when you started, it could be as low as 430 or a little bit higher if you need a barrel or you wanna go with the more premium optic. Now we will talk about the performance of these, but all of them right up front run 100%. Otherwise I wouldn't recommend any of them. But there are some standout features of each when it comes to not only the porting or the compensator or the parts on here, and I will give my opinion on the felt recoil and if I would change anything once we go through the packages. Next up is probably the sexiest looking one of the bunch, and that is going to be the Patriot CNC version, because this thing is like business in the front and party in the back here when it comes to the trigger that's in this thing, and overall is an extremely solid package when we start talking about how this thing came together. Let's go ahead and get the trigger out of the way. This is the long-awaited Overwatch Precision Fox trigger for the Hellcat Pro. The Hellcat and the Hellcat Pro triggers are slightly different. You've got to get the one made for your specific model. Also, if you put this in your Hellcat Pro, you're going to need to do some dry fire because it might give you a surprise out on the range, and I'm going to leave it at that. But Overwatch Precision produces some of the best duty style triggers out there in the market. I've personally used them for several years in EDC and my duty style rigs out there, so they are absolutely outstanding. They feel good, and they are one of only 2 trigger companies I know that actually have some approval letters for law enforcement agencies on their triggers to be used in duty weapons, so that is pretty cool. I know you've been looking at that sexy multi-cam black Cerakote job here and the porting on this, all of which was done by Patriot CNC. They did a bang up job, not only on the Cerakote work, but the porting here. Now, if we take a good look at the porting work here in the slide windowing, you're gonna notice 2 vertical circular ports, which are gonna be right in front of the sight, so on your end of the sight. And then in front of the sight towards the muzzle, you're going to see a large chunk port. Now, this is going to do an amazing job reducing recoil here. In fact, I was very surprised that this thing actually cycled on 115 grain 100%, because it is very aggressive out there. But also inside the barrel here, where the porting and everything is, it's been slightly relieved. That way, as the projectile goes down the barrel, it's not stripping any of the jacket on your bullet. It's not going to cause any deviations, especially on that big chunk port on the end, because other companies that do porting don't do that, and you sometimes get the jacket flying out of the ports or getting sheared off, which can cause a deviation in where that round is going to go, even if it's a fairly close target. So a very good job there. Also, the barrel has been flush crowned in there, which is always a super sexy look. And I know the multicam black may be a little wild for some people, but when you take a good look at that porting and the way it's done, it's actually a very minimalist look to it. So it's not a super aggressive porting or slide window job on there. So it still has a very sleek look if that is your thing. But again, flat out performed. Let's move up top because we have to talk about the new Vortex Defender CCW. This is the most current model that has all of the inline changes after the initial launch of the CCW Defender, and basically gave it all of the options that everybody said it should have had on the initial launch. So what we're talking about and what we get in here is the micro optic. You're gonna get a over double battery life. I think it's over 25,000 hours now. The auto shut off is now 10 minutes instead of 14 hours, which I think is probably what we all thought it should have been up front. You'd also get a better LED in here now. So they went with a much stronger LED in there. So you're not gonna get any phasing or pulsing. You can get a 3 MOA, a 6 MOA, but ultimately it's going to give you all of the modern functions and features at the same price point that the new Defender ST or the full-size one had, and pretty much the rest of the market had. What is the price point on this one as it sits right here? And let's start off upstairs with the optics. So it's the same price point. You can get the Vortex CCW for $225. The porting and the slide work here with a single color Cerakote, not the multicam stuff, because camouflage Cerakote jobs are much more expensive. So plan on spending an extra $100 if you want one of those. But for the porting and the slide work and a single color of Cerakote, you are looking right at about $300. When it comes to that trigger, about $120. We are getting up there in price now because for the options, like I said, it's going to be about $625 plus the upfront cost of your Hellcat Pro. Again, it did run 100% reliable, but you have to remember this is a permanent change. There is no going back from when you send this in and get your barrel ported and get your slide worked and all that stuff. So you have to want this, and you have to want it long term, because there is no reversing the process once you've done it. And now for the full package, because this one has literally everything, that is the mini monster to include the Floyds machine shop magwell and base plates on here. So this one is going to be the most expensive. It's also going to have probably the most aggressive look when it comes to the porting. Now, magwells for me, like this one from Floyds, are just a go because they do a lot for you. They help you get a better grip on the pistol. You got a little bit of a pinky ledge down there. Your master grip just feels tighter. Also, you now are going to be able to get that magazine in there a little bit faster and maybe a little bit cleaner under stress or when you need to work it for speed, because you've got all of that additional surface area. So for me, when I look at a pistol, one of the first things I think about is, can I get a magwell on it? Now, the Floyds magwell specifically is extremely nice, and I kind of figured it was going to be that way, having owned a couple of different magwells from Floyds, both on M&Ps and my PDPs. He just designs them really, really well. However, you do have to use the Floyds base plates on them, whether it's the standard, the +2 or the +5. It will not work with your factory magazines, so that is going to be an additional cost. But I think most people, when they use them and see them, they're pretty much okay with it. A little additional part is I do have the Apex Tactical Specialties magazine release on here, which is a little bit extended and has far better grip texture than the factory one. And I am a huge fan of extended controls as well, but there is something you need to keep in mind. So depending on your grip and who's using this, they may or may not like extended controls. So with that Apex magazine release, when I was out on the range testing this, I had my buddy Jonathan shoot it as well, just to get his opinion. And he kept accidentally dropping that mag just because of his grip and where he places his hand on here. So when it comes to extended controls, you've got to proof those things out there in practice before you start carrying them around, because it works for me, but it didn't work for my buddy. Now, up in that trigger guard, again, you are gonna see an Overwatch precision trigger. However, this version is the TAC. And this is my favorite trigger out there for like defensive carry situations. Again, they do a phenomenal job on their triggers. You have to get the Hellcat Pro version, and you need to do some practice with it so you don't get that surprise out there on the range when you're using it for the first time. They're just flat out great. And again, comes in right around that $120 price point. Up on the slide, you'll see I have the Holosun 407K on this version. Again, great optics, solid, well proven out there in the market by a ton of people. The slide work, you're gonna see the Floyds work here. So this has been DLC coated, and it's got aggressive side and top porting again here, with a relocation of that front sight to make sure it's behind that large chunk port in the front. This one is going to have 3 side ports, and it's going to have 2 top ports in that chunk area up there. This is definitely going to keep that felt recoil to a minimum. The barrel has also been deep crowned, and the internal portion where those ports are has been relieved to ensure that nothing is ripped off of that projectile when it comes to the copper jacket, and you're not getting any deviation on that projectile as it goes down range. Now, we are getting up there in price point again because this has a lot of options on it, and it's got the addition of the magwell and the base plates on there. So let's start talking about the optic. That 407K can be had for that $225, which is pretty solid. When we get into the magwell, that's going to be about $75. And then each base plate is going to be a minimum of $25 for the standard, and I think up to like $40 for the +5s. So you've got to take that into account. Now we get into the trigger, again, $120. Talking about the slide work here. So if we do option for option, right? So a single color Cerakote, like we talked about with the Patriot, and that slide work, you're looking right at 325 bucks. So this one is the most pricey version, but it has the most options. But our total package here, as you see it, for the options is gonna be right at 770 bucks, give or take a little, because prices do change and there are different options out there. So by far the most expensive, but again, has the most options in it, plus the cost of your Hellcat Pro. So those are the 3 ultimate Hellcat Pros. Now, how did they all perform on the range? They were all 100% as far as functionality goes. What I will say, there are a couple things that I did notice out there. First of which being, on the Floyds version, did a great job reducing felt recoil and muzzle rise. However, it was the loudest. So you got a little bit more of that sound or that concussive blast around you, because the ports are not only on the top, but they're also on the side. So it seemed to be, it wasn't like overbearing or anything. You just noticed it a little bit more than the compensated or the Patriot machine version. But also this version with the Floyds magwell just felt the best in the hand. The addition of that ledge on there for your hand to get onto not only makes it really clean on the reloads, but it just has a much more solid feel in the hand, and you don't have to worry about that little gap area where the magazine goes in and catching your skin on there when you're doing a magazine exchange. So the feel in the hand, definitely a positive with the Floyds magwell. Now the Herrington Arms compensated version right here, this is a real sweet spot for the performance, because this is a really good EDC kind of setup. You got the optic, you got the light, and you got a little bit of a performance gain with the Herrington Arms comp for a low price point here. So you're maximizing your options, minimizing price, and overall still performed quite well out there. It did not give you the recoil or felt recoil reduction that the porting did, but still gave a noticeable difference. And last up, the Patriot CNC version right here. Both me and Jonathan out on the range easily thought this one had the least amount of felt recoil and muzzle rise.
All right, trigger I like the least, obviously. I like the second one better, the camo one.
The Patriot machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one that shot better.
And it was pretty instant that both of us had that feeling out there. It also has the least aggressive look, in my opinion. So you don't have the big comp hanging out the end, and you don't have the side ports and everything. So for how they did it, it's sleeker and it definitely performed. And of course, the Overwatch trigger in there was very solid. Now, having tested all of these things, is there like a magical mix of soup? Or would I swap parts around, or would I choose one thing over another to build the ultimate Hellcat Pro out of the 3 that we have looked at here today? And I'm going to say yes. What I would do is I would change the Overwatch precision tack trigger, so the flat face trigger in this one, into this version with the Patriot CNC slide work and porting job, because it performed the best, and then add the magwell from this one onto this one, and I think that gives you the full package, and then put the Streamlight on there and you're going to be good to go. As far as the red dots go, I honestly think the Vortex Defender CCW has a better looking dot than the Holosun. It was much more crisp and it was much more clear to me. Now, it doesn't have the multi-reticle option if you want the 507K, but if you just want a straight dot, I think the Defender CCW beats out the look of it a little bit better than the Holosun. And now that it has all of those up-to-date options that we want, the auto shut off in 10 minutes, the longer battery life, the better LED, and it's proven to be very durable, I think that is the way I would go. So again, the Hellcat Pro here, I'd put the Floyds magwell on it, I'd keep the CCW, keep the porting here, but I would change from the Falx trigger in here to the Overwatch flat face tack, because I just like the flat face version, and that's kind of a personal thing. But to me, I think that would be the magical mix of making the ultimate Hellcat Pro. I know some of you would have picked different things when it comes to building the ultimate Hellcat Pro, so I'm curious in the comments down below, let me know which parts you would have gone with to make your ultimate build, or would you leave it FUD style with, you know, no changes or anything at all. Make sure you guys get subbed up to the channel, keep doing it on the range, and remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. I will see you all on the next one.